I'm going to try to speak into the mic so I don't have to talk so loud, get hoarse in a hurry. Everybody here okay? Everybody ready? Shauna? South Carolina's booming economy once again created a record budget surplus this year, totaling over $1.8 billion in money we did not expect but were hoping for. Last year, that is 2024, was the third best in state history. $8.2 billion in capital investment that equated out to 5,500 new jobs announced. That's through commerce. Companies already located in South Carolina reinvested in the state with over $5.3 billion in announced capital investment through expansion projects in 2024. The top three leading industries by capital investment were information technology that had $4.1 billion, automotive, which we've been familiar with for a long time, with $1.3 billion, and aerospace and aviation with $1 billion. Domestic companies made up 67% of our 2024 capital investment, while international companies made up 33%. Since 2017, we've announced over $44.7 billion in new capital investment and over 92,000 new jobs. Whether it's lower taxes, less regulation, affordable power, quality education, our natural or cultural resources, or a trained and available workforce, South Carolina's future prosperity requires that we constantly work to maintain our competitive advantage in the ever-accelerating race for new jobs and capital investment. And again, that competition in the Southeast is fierce. And if you look at the numbers from U-Haul and others about where people are going to and where they're leaving from, the South is the place to be. Income tax cut. A few years ago, South Carolina had the highest personal income tax rate in the Southeast and the 12th highest in the nation. That's no more. 3 years ago, I signed into law the largest income tax cut in state history, designed to incrementally drop the personal income tax rate from then 7% down to 6% over a period of years. Our booming economy has created annual budget surpluses that have allowed us to cut this rate faster and farther than we originally anticipated. My executive budget continues cutting the state's personal income tax, dropping the rate from 6.2% to 6%, thus allowing taxpayers to keep an additional $193.5 million of their hard-earned money instead of sending it to the state government. And we don't need to stop at 6%. We should continue cutting or eliminating the personal income tax rate as much as we can and as fast as we can. And if you look at the figures in other states, you'll see that taxes are all over the place, whether personal income taxes, corporate taxes, property taxes, sales taxes. There are a lot of ways to raise money. But what we need to do is to reduce rates, practice and seek out effectiveness and efficiencies, invest on the things that are most important, and think and plan strategically, not only for the next 5 years, but the next 10 and the next 100. And I'm confident if we do that, our future will continue to be brighter and brighter. Our future economic prosperity requires that state government maintain consistency and certainty in its regulatory permitting processes. Regardless of the outcome, businesses and employers should be able to mark their calendar and know that a permitting decision will be made on or before the date set at the beginning of the application process. Uncertainty is the enemy of prosperity. Several months ago, the Department of Environmental Services officially became a cabinet agency directly accountable to the governor. My executive budget provides the Department of Environmental Services with an appropriation of $13.7 million to hire and train additional personnel necessary to reduce the current backlog of existing environmental permit applications. In addition, with this appropriation, the agency will be required to issue future permitting decisions within 90 days of that application submission. 8 years ago, the minimum starting salary of a teacher in South Carolina was $30,113, and the average teacher salary at that time was below the Southeastern average. At that time, I proposed that we begin raising the minimum starting teacher salary as much as we can each year, with the goal of raising it to at least $50,000 minimum starting salary by 2026. Excuse me. Today, the minimum starting salary of a teacher in South Carolina is $47,000. Now, that's the minimum starting salary. And the average teacher salary now exceeds the Southeastern average. This represents, since 2017, an increase of 56.1% in the average starting teacher salary in South Carolina. And last year, our South Carolina required minimum starting teacher salary was higher than both North Carolina and Georgia. My executive budget provides $200 million to reach a $50,000 minimum starting teacher salary a year earlier than my goal set back then at 2026. But I emphasize again, we should not stop then. If we're going to educate our children, if South Carolina's future is going to be bright, as fast as things change, we must have educated young people. In early childhood education, we've had, since the statewide expansion, a full-day, 4-year kindergarten program in the school year 2021 and 2022. Enrollment in the program in public schools, private child care centers, and private schools has increased significantly. The data have shown that a child from a low-income household enrolled in a state-funded full-day, 4-year kindergarten program is more likely to be ready for kindergarten than their peers who do not participate. We all know that to be true. Today, 18,083, that is 18,083 students are enrolled in the program. The Office of First Steps to School Readiness, which we call First Steps, anticipates that a 7% increase in the number of children from low-income households will enroll in the program in the school year 25-26 at a cost of $2.8 million, which has been included in my executive budget. The trust fund. The executive budget provides $30 million for the Education Scholarship Trust Fund in anticipation of the General Assembly quickly passing legislation that will address the state Supreme Court's decision last year. These funds will allow low-income parents to choose the type of education environment and instruction that best suits their child's unique needs. In addition, my executive budget proposes allowing education lottery tickets to be purchased utilizing debit cards in addition to the current cash-only requirement. Only 3 states require cash-only purchases: South Carolina, Tennessee, and Wyoming. But over the years, people have moved from cash to credit cards and debit cards, and a lot of vendors do not even allow cash payment. So we're trying to keep up with the change in the times and not let the program, which was carefully thought out, there was some in favor and some not in favor. Nevertheless, thousands of families depend on it now in South Carolina. According to the State Board of Economic Advisors, fiscal year 2025-26, education lottery proceeds and investment earnings are currently projected to be $31.9 million less than the amount appropriated in last year's budget. The Lottery Commission estimates that the debit card purchases would guarantee an additional $52 million in lottery proceeds that could be utilized to fund the Education Scholarship Trust Fund or to increase the Life, Hope, and Palmetto College Scholarship Awards amount. School resource officers. Placing an armed, certified school resource officer in every school in every county all day, every day, has been one of my top priorities as governor. This was and is needed for the safety of the children, the administrators, the teachers, and the comfort of the parents. At my request, the General Assembly began funding a grant program administered by the Department of Public Safety to provide school districts with funds to hire more resource officers for our state's 1,284 public schools. This grant program has been very successful and has more than doubled the number of schools with an officer assigned to a school, going from 406 in 2018 to 1,106 in 2024. So we have just a few more to go. I am recommending an additional $21 million appropriation for the School Resource Officer Grant Program in fiscal year 2025-2026. This funding will finish the job, adding an officer at each of the remaining 177 schools currently without an assigned officer. That will be a great day. Access and affordability to higher education for every South Carolinian is essential to ensuring that our state has the trained and skilled workforce to compete for jobs and investment in the future. This means we must invest to make all higher education, our colleges, universities, and technical colleges, accessible and affordable for the sons and daughters of South Carolina. This year marks the sixth consecutive year that I will propose that we freeze college tuition for in-state students in exchange for an appropriation to a number of institutions of higher education of $29.9 million. For the fourth year in a row, my executive budget proposes providing $80 million in state lottery funds for needs-based grants so that every South Carolinian who qualifies for financial aid, as measured by the federal Pell Grants program, has sufficient state financial assistance to attend any in-state public college, university, or technical college. Students at private, independent, and historically black colleges and universities will receive an additional $20 million for tuition grants and assistance as well. Once again, I'll renew my call for the General Assembly to fund and authorize a $2 million systemic review of our state's 33 public institutions of higher education to be conducted by the Department of Employment and Workforce. This is for two-year schools, the technical college, the community colleges, the four-year colleges, the research universities, all of them. The goal is to make sure that we are preparing to meet our state's future workforce needs. We have people all over the world that want to come and hire our people to do their work. They're in these plants we see. They hire our people. They're coming fast, and they're bringing very big, important industries and jobs with them. And our factories, our plants, our businesses here are growing as well. We're in a great growth period, but we have to have our people trained, ready, and educated to take those jobs, to take those opportunities, and take us to the future. This study will address everything: the sustainability, accessibility, and affordability, as well as it will provide an assessment of the need for consolidation of existing physical space, programs, certificates, and degrees offered at our public colleges and universities as compared to the projected workforce needs of our state in the future. And again, our state is looking up. Some others are looking up. Not many are looking up with the opportunities that we have. And now is the time for us to act. Workforce scholarships. To address the high demand, very high demand for skills, training, and knowledge, this executive budget once again provides $95 million in lottery funds to South Carolina Workforce Industry Needs Scholarships. We call it SC Wins, through the technical college system. In the last 5 years, this very successful program has provided over 40,597 South Carolinians with scholarships to cover the cost of tuition and required fees at any of our technical colleges to earn a post-second degree or industry credential in the high-demand careers like manufacturing, nursing, computer science, information technology, transportation, logistics, or construction. So since we have been pushing this program of workforce scholarships for high-demand jobs. This will bring the amount of extra money we put into the system, $333 million, and every dollar is well worth it. Healthcare. South Carolina has been identified as part of what is called the stroke belt, with high stroke and dementia mortality rates. That's not good. Current neurological care options in the state are limited, which forces our people to seek care outside the state, which delays early diagnosis and treatment and therefore may result in extended hospital stays and significant financial burdens as well as other problems. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create a neurological facility for critical care procedures, rehabilitation services, and leading-edge research in the field of neurology. The University of South Carolina has several important existing initiatives, such as the Brain Health Network, the McCausland Center for Brain Imaging, and the Center for the Study of Aphasia Recovery. My executive budget recommends a $100 million appropriation to the Department of Health and Human Services for the construction of a neurological hospital with an 80-bed critical care unit and a 32-bed neurological rehabilitation unit operated by the University of South Carolina. Our state health plan provides medical, vision, dental, and pharmacy insurance coverage for 543,579 South Carolina public employees. School district teachers and employees make up 41% of the government retirees. State government retirees, 37%. The schools, 41%. State agency employees, 21%, and local boards, 1%. This today will mark the fourth year in a row that the state health plan, administered by the Public Employee Benefits Authority, has requested an additional $112 million for that year to offset health care provider cost increases and to simply maintain the existing insurance benefits for all of those employees I just mentioned. That's almost $500 million in 4 years. That is unsustainable. While this executive budget recommends providing an additional $12 million, it comes with a new cost containment requirement. Each vendor selected by the Public Employee Benefits Association to provide medical, vision, dental, and pharmacy insurance benefits shall do what? They shall be required to identify and propose cost-saving measures from those vendors in order to slow the cost increases to a manageable level. Bridges. There is no infrastructure more in need of investment than our state's roads, bridges, highways, and interstates. Any state in our country at any time that is thrived based on moving communication, transportation, and getting people and things to where they need to go. Because our booming economy and population growth have outpaced our ability to keep up with improvements to our infrastructure, transportation, we must continue to make big, bold, and transformative investments. If we are going to invest in one place, this is a place that is essential for our economic growth. To that end, my economic budget continues our investment in infrastructure with an appropriation of $100 million to South Carolina Department of Transportation to be used to prepare, rehabilitate, and rebuild many of the nearly 9,000 bridges on primary and secondary roads across our state that need it. Now, this is in addition to the regular DOT budget. Conservation, preservation. As you know, we have gained a reputation as a model of commerce, conservation, and preservation, and that's good news. This year, I'm once again recommending that significant funds, $15.5 million, be appropriated to the Conservation Land Bank, the Department of Natural Resources, the Office of Resilience, and the Forestry Commission for the purposes of identifying and preserving culturally or environmentally significant properties, disaster recovery, as well as flood mitigation efforts. As for law enforcement, keep South Carolinians safe, we must maintain a robust law enforcement presence and properly fund the police. A few years ago, we tasked the South Carolina Department of Administration with conducting a comprehensive analysis of law enforcement pay within state government. This effort was aimed at ensuring that salaries are competitive to attract and retain top-tier talent, just like the teachers. As a result, South Carolina's law enforcement officers have received substantial pay raises, some as high as 52% in the last 3 years. My executive budget continues our investment in our state law enforcement professionals by providing $14.5 million for pay raises and the hiring of the new law enforcement officers. I also once again proposing a $2,000 state income tax credit for every active duty law enforcement officer, firefighter, first responder, and emergency medical technician employed by a public entity. This non-refundable tax credit will provide a total of $43.3 million in economic and income tax relief for those who put their lives on the line every day for us and serve and protect us. The executive budget also recommends providing our Department of Corrections with a total of $43.2 million in new appropriations to expand cell phone and contraband interdiction efforts, hire new corrections officers, increase medical and mental health services, provide employee retention raises again, and pay for deferred maintenance in all 21 prisons. Director Sterling has done a magnificent job in controlling contraband and cell phones, an effort that he led for a number of years, and he finally broke through, for which we are grateful. Animal fighting, especially dog fighting, is one of the cruelest criminal activities in our society, and most people don't know what's going on. Law officers estimate that most of the people participating in this barbaric activity have long criminal records. I've had over the years county sheriffs say that if they could find one of these dog fights going on out in the woods in secret and drop a net over the whole bunch, they'd probably get rid of most of the criminals in the county. If you've never seen anything like this, I wouldn't advise you to look at it for long. Just understand it's horrible, and we've got to get rid of it. This executive budget recommends a $500,000 appropriation to the State Law Enforcement Division to bolster their animal fighting effort. Excuse me, I started working on this when I was Attorney General, and we're making progress, but apparently it is an activity that a lot of people seem to enjoy, as horrible as it is, but we're not going to have it. Disaster relief. Finally, my executive budget recommends significant disaster relief and aid as a result of the damage from Hurricane Helene, which struck our state on September 27, 2024, as you know. It's the deadliest storm to ever hit South Carolina, with 49 confirmed deaths, surpassing the former deadliest storm, Hurricane Hugo, which I believe was 13 or 14 deaths. The damage from Hurricane Helene was devastating. At least 6,300 homes were damaged. It spawned 21 tornadoes across the state. The agribusiness industry suffered $621 million at least. The farmers and foresters generally underestimate. And 912 roads and bridges were closed. 10 bridges had to be rebuilt due to the hurricane. At its peak, nearly 1,036 million customers were without electricity. South Carolina moved quickly to provide those impacted by Helene with access to disaster relief and assistance from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, local governments, electric utilities, water and sewer systems, and charitable aid organizations. In addition, the state was successful in its request for 100% federal reimbursement from FEMA for 120 days, after which South Carolina will resume responsibility for the 25% state share. In December, Congress approved $110 billion in disaster relief and farm aid for states impacted by Hurricane Helene and other storms. I and others approached President Biden and others, the head of FEMA and others, demonstrating and explaining how the farm aid was critical at this time. To date, only $150 million in community disaster recovery block grants from the Department of House and Urban Development have been designated for South Carolina for that relief package. However, it is very likely that the state funds will be necessary to offset disaster recovery costs incurred that will not be eligible for one reason or another for FEMA reimbursement. So, my executive budget recommends $50 million to be appropriated to the Department of Transportation for unreimbursed costs related to Hurricane Helene, which include costs related to debris removal and repairs to roads and bridges. In addition to that $50 million, I recommend that $40 million be appropriated to the Office of Resilience to replace the Disaster Relief and Resilience Reserve Fund and replenish it, and also the Disaster Relief and Resilience Revolving Land Loan Fund, which were utilized for immediate relief efforts related to Hurricane Helene. I'm also recommending that $150 million, so that's 50, 40, and 150, be appropriated to create the South Carolina Public Assistance Program. That will be new. It will be administered by the South Carolina Emergency Management Division. This grant program will allow local governments, public utilities, nonprofit, and charitable organizations to apply for disaster recovery funds, funds that were either denied by the federal government or did not meet the FEMA thresholds. Finally, due to the expended power outages during Hurricane Helene that resulted from downed power lines, from high winds and tree damage, this executive budget also recommends a proviso that directs the Office of Regulatory Staff to study the economic and technical feasibility of undergrounding electric power lines in the state. And as you know, that storm was unusual in where it went, but also because of the wind and the rain and the softness of the ground, we had not only power lines get knocked down from limbs, but we had to have power poles themselves knocked down from trees and limbs in the rain. And because of the electrical lines entangled with all the limbs and debris, it was very difficult to remove that quickly. But we had probably the best group of people working together in the world to clean it up and get us back on our feet. And we appreciate that. That's all I have for you right now. Anybody got a question? Shauna?
So you proposed $30 million for the education scholarships K-12. As I'm sure you're aware, the Senate plan would take up to $130 million from lottery proceeds. Considering that lottery money is not there, what do you think about that? What do you think of the plan to expand, or do you think it should stay limited?
That'll be between the House and the Senate. They have different ideas. All I know is that we have to educate these young people. We have to find a way to be sure we have the best facilities, the best teachers, that we have everything they need and that they can get to these schools.
Governor, you're proposing accelerating the income tax cut to 6%, 2 years ahead of schedule.
That's right.
There's only so much of current money available, and you've got some big ticket items, including $200 million just for teacher salary raises. Is it really responsible to accelerate the income tax cut when it was designed that way for any kind of economic downturn, to safeguard this economic downturn?
Yeah. Don't think we're going to have one. We're going in the other direction. But the people of this state pay a lot of taxes. And any way that we can reduce that tax load, we need to do. And this method has proven to work. And I and others believe that we can do it. It's part of our economic growth and prosperity. Remember, you have businesses, you have people, you have companies, and they're all looking for the best place to go, and the tax structure is a part of that.
Some lawmakers have been asking not just for that tax cut, but for an across-the-board over $1 billion tax cut from spending, arguing that the
Well, we always have to, we can't be running a deficit. That's why we have the economic advisors give us a forecast. Fortunately, the last few years, we've been billions of dollars more have come in because we're growing and people are working and paying taxes, and we're expanding so that we've been able to cut those taxes. I think that's going to continue. But again, these things don't happen in a moment. But the more of the load that we can take off of people themselves, so that they can spend money on the things that are important for them and their families, and the less that goes into government that is wasted or is spent in places that are not the best places, the better we can do on spending, on making those decisions, and the more efficient we can become, just like the new department in Washington. That's a good idea. I think we try to work here to be as efficient as we can. But as long as we're growing and not wasting money, we can continue to cut taxes.
Do you think we're wasting money here, and if so, where?
I think we always need to concentrate on the most important things. I think that there are some things more important than others. I think there's nothing more important than education. You got to have transportation. You have to have good health. There may be some things we can do without. But we have enough money, and we're growing, so is the good news. Now, if our economy was shrinking, that would force some choices for sure. But we have the beauty of our economy is growing, and if we use our heads and think strategically and think ahead and make the main things that we concentrate on, we'll continue to grow and be happy, healthy, and have a great place to live. I do. And I think yes, I think it's a big part of it, and there's a lot of interest now. The more interest in nuclear, it faded for a while. We had, unfortunately, the two reactors at VC Summer didn't get built. Georgia went ahead and built their two. I think it cost them 3 times as much as they thought right along the Savannah. Now they're building 2 more. They're in some parts of the country, I think at 3 Mile Island and Pennsylvania, Microsoft has said, we'll be your, crank it back up and we'll be your customer for buy it all for the next 30 years. Our demands for power are enormous. But we're for all of the above. I don't see much support for the turbines. Some of the other states that have them now wish they didn't. So we don't have any, and frankly, I don't think that's the best idea for us in our place. But all of the above need to always be explored, but nuclear, it gives you the biggest, the most power out of the smallest amount of space. And it works day and night, and it never stops. And so I think that's part of it. Now we, of course, the Battelle Alliance was one that we secured several years ago. They will look at Battelle as a company that runs most, I think most of the 17 national labs in the country. And one of them is at the Savannah River site, Savannah River National Lab. And it was time to have a new academic team to participate in all that research that they do there. And so we made a bid to be that academic team. And our team consisted of USC, Clemson, South Carolina State, Georgia, and Georgia Tech. And we've been given $20 million for several years to provide and pay for that academic team. And that is a great thing. Particularly, we did that, and then here came, we started Power SC. We knew we needed more power. You remember the conferences and seminars, all of that. And then there was the federal government, the Commerce Department had a program where they were going to spend billions of our taxpayer dollars on various projects for technology and innovation hubs in the United States. There could be 12 of them, that's all. So we made one application, Power. How to make it, how to be efficient, how to transmit it, the grids, all of those kind of things. That is the one application that we made. Other states made 2 or 3. Well, we were one of the 12, which means there's $45 million a year to use to discover those things about power And most of what we're doing, I think at our 3 locations that'll be set up, is testing it without having to build it and scale it and then test it. We test it to make sure it works, make the corrections, so when we do scale it up, it'll work. Now, that is a very big thing to happen to our state. But power, everything that you're wearing and everything that you're using there depends on power. And we've seen blackouts in other states. We've come close a couple of times in ours, but we have to be sure that if we are going to continue on, particularly with these data centers that just drink up the power and water, we have to have plenty of power for all our businesses, homes, farms. So that is right at the top of the list. And fortunately, our people, our leaders, our public and private, understood several years ago that we had to go in that direction. So we're doing very well there.
Governor, on your executive budget, there is no money that you're requesting for the Department of Juvenile Justice. Do you have confidence in Eden Henry?
I have confidence and I have great hope in Eden. She's well qualified for that position, which is one of the most difficult ones in state government. When they raise the age to where you now have 18-year-olds, that's the limit now. You're getting bigger and stronger and older people in the Department of Juvenile Justice. Money has been appropriated in the past, I think somewhere between $70 and $80 million that has not been utilized yet. She's working, her team's working, they want to do the right thing. But I think the General Assembly would probably like to see some progress on those plans before putting more money into those plans, but more money is going to have to come because it is getting to be a desperate situation. It's a small part of the government, but it has an enormous impact, and some of the situations there are just tragic. So we got to fix it.
If the legislature does put money into the budget to fund more of their capital needs, which they've talked about, needing more detention centers for juveniles across the state, will you be okay with that, or are you asking the legislature not to give them?
No, I'm not. I want them to do what they usually do, and that is they'll have hearings, they'll ask some questions, they'll get an accurate gauge on the progress, on the plans in the future, and how quickly things are going to happen, and they'll get their own understanding of what needs to be done. But I'm confident something's going to be done. Now, to put a size on it, I don't know, but it's it's critical, of course, like a lot of other things we do.
Governor, there's a specific line here about permitting reform, getting permits due in 90 days. I know there are some that they might take 20 days. There are other ones that can take months, even years. And was just wondering how this proposal might be feasible. Do you think that might cause us to rush through some more complicated permits? How's that going to work?
Well, some of them are complicated, but I think there's always a way to speed that process up as long as it's thorough, as long as it is reasonable, and as long as it is done promptly. Then I think we can cut way down on those times. I think 90 days ought to be just about enough for anything, state and federal. If people don't get behind the backlog, don't let it build up.
Going back to the lottery for a moment, you mentioned some people were in the past opposed to that, includes yourself.
Right.
Very anti-gambling. Tell me about your thought process to making it easier for people to buy a lottery ticket, and are you still opposed to sports gambling?
Yes and yes. But what we have here is a situation where there's a lot of debate, pros and cons, when the lottery was instituted. And the families that have depended on that money, and a lot of young people gotten educated that would not have gotten educated without it, or that would have been carrying more debt, or perhaps it wouldn't have been able to make it at all. So what I see we're doing, we don't want to abandon that activity just by neglect, because the number of people playing have been going down, 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 and down. And one reason for that, according to the economic advisors or others, is that a lot of people don't carry cash anymore, and a lot of businesses don't take cash. And so this is one of them that you had to play with cash. We were one of 3 states that require cash. Well, I understand the logic of not having a credit card, because you can run up a big debt on a credit card of money you don't have. But a debit card only accesses the money you have in your account. So having it in your account or having it in your pocket is roughly the same thing. But if we don't allow this, then the chances of that program doing what it was designed to do to begin with are dim.
Are you worried about leading to more problem gambling to make it just a little bit easier?
Most of the things that we shouldn't be doing seem to be getting easier all the time when you live long enough. But that may be an argument for or against. You're talking about if we use this. Yeah, but you're still limited to the money that you ordinarily would have in your pocket. But gambling in general is not I think not a family-friendly type of activity.
Two more questions, still out. Governor, you're just down in Mar-a-Lago with the president-elect. Can you tell us about that trip and what you guys discussed?
Would I do what?
President Donald Trump was just out in Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, I remember. I was there. Yeah, yeah. It was a great trip. Had a lot. He's an interesting man. I would say, a fascinating man.
Ask for anything specifically for South Carolina from him?
Not at that moment.
All right, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.